Welcome to the Stronger Together podcast, brought to you by Sandpoint Strength and Conditioning. I'm your coach, Kenny Marquardt, and I am here with another one of your coaches, Amanda Abajian.
You didn't screw up my name, so it's a good start.
I was actually just got really nervous about that, even though I've said it so many times. I was like, wait a minute, don't screw this up.
I was waiting for it, so we're off to a good start.
Yeah. I'm thrilled to have you here. I know you are super thrilled, like all the other coaches have been. But you just have a super cool story for being here for so long, and then for your journey as becoming a coach and all the things that we've really shared together, which is pretty dang cool. Mm-hmm. So yeah, thanks for hopping on.
Thank you.
Let's talk about how you started the gym, period. Like, it's been 9 years now.
I think so. Well, maybe, I don't know. We keep saying we're going to look it up. I actually have no idea. I think we might be at 10 at this point. But I joined when I first moved to Sandpoint, and I had just left Priest Lake, where I'd been coming from. My boyfriend was still there, now my husband. And I started working at Spud's downtown, just like everyone else does when you move to Sandpoint. You make sandwiches and you learn to cook from Peter Myko. And then two of the cooks there drug me into your gym.
Yep. What was that like? I mean, how excited were you to come in or not? That was a long, I'll be honest, I don't really remember this.
Well, I remember I actually had never even heard of CrossFit, which was kind of thinking back now. I'm surprised that I hadn't heard of it, but I was pretty nervous. I was terrified. And then I showed up, and you and Big Tom made us run in circles, and you actually made me do a somersault on my first day at the gym.
No way. Yeah. Oh, this is why I love doing this podcast, because you bring this stuff up.
And I remember you and Big Tom kind of looked at me because I didn't eat it, and you're like, oh, cool, okay.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
My first day. I just remember being like, this is what CrossFit does. We run around in circles and do somersaults. All right.
And we should bring that back. Maybe, I don't think that many people would. That's probably actually a good indication of what you've gone. Like, that's a good metaphor for your entire experience at this place. I think willing to do wild stuff.
Yeah. Seeing how we've evolved, not just as like our workouts, our warm-ups, but just the members that we have. I mean, a lot has changed in 10 years, and a lot of good things, and it had to happen the way that it did, which I think is great. But I think back to those first 3 months and surprised.
Yeah. What was the rest of that like? I mean, so were you, after that first day, were you like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever done? Or was it?
No, I think for me, because eventually we stopped doing somersaults. So
running in circles.
Did other things. But I remember, like, after that was my trial class, and then coming back for more and being really challenged in a way that I hadn't been since I stopped playing sports. And after that was kind of the hook that got me in. And then you guys made me sign up for the open, and that's a whole nother thing. But that was back before we scaled anything. And I remember being my second month there, being forced to do heavy thrusters and burpees over the bar. And I thought I was a near-death experience. And that was very wild for me. But it just kind of ignited the feelings that I had playing sports as a kid, of like something that I could do, but I sucked at currently and knew I could get better at, and I loved it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Again, you've endured a lot to still be here and now on this side of the table, so that's great. And then what was the process even to get you coaching? I feel like I remember asking you about this. Mm-hmm. I remember you always interacted, like, you're just a very personable professional. You just have a great demeanor about you, and you moved really well. And I just don't remember how I initiated that conversation.
You asked me out to lunch, and I thought I was being fired as a member from the gym, and I was terrified. I remember telling the girls at Spud's, and we went to Spud's for lunch, by the way.
Great. I do remember this. Yes, I do remember this.
And I had just, I was working in the girls, I wasn't working there anymore, but I still was really close with those girls. Yep. And you cornered me one night. I would work out at the 5:30 class because of my insurance job. I had to come after insurance was done. And you said, hey, I really just want to talk to you about something. Can we maybe go out to lunch someday? I was like, oh, this is the end. I don't know what I did, what I didn't do right. But so we went out to lunch, and we basically spent most of the time talking about, how things were going at the gym, what I liked about it, what I didn't like. And then you said, so have you ever thought about part-time doing this thing? And I don't have any idea what I said. I think I was so nervous the entire time. But eventually I shadowed with you, and I think with Emily at the time, and I was going into another new job, and I said, this is the only way I'm taking this job is if you allow me to coach as well. And so some of that, I don't remember all of it, but I just remember the lunch was very terrifying.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Yep. I bet again, my memory is not strong.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure I had the total opposite and being nervous about what the heck you were going to say when I asked
Yeah.
you about that. So that's great.
Now
Yeah.
that I know you, I know that side of it. But I remember looking back and like, I mean, it was the biggest thing that no one could lift around you because we were all so terrified of you. If you walked in the room, we'd all miss our snatch or whatever it
Yeah.
was. And now this guy's asking me to go out to lunch that I can't even work out in front of because I'm so afraid. And now looking back, that's all hilarious. But it was at the time, I'm like, I guess I'm going to work for this guy. Here we go.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. I'm glad I have, hopefully that's softened over the years. I don't know. I think I still have that unfortunate, curse of people getting nervous and missing lifts in front of me, but
it's gotten better for me over
yeah,
time.
good. Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then, so you coached for what? A couple of, probably not even that long till we,
I think, you know, it was probably maybe I had 5 or 6 months of part-time coaching and was leaving my insurance job. I actually was going to try and use my degree, which was in natural resource sciences and wildlife ecology. And I became the district administrator at Bonner Soil and Water Conservation District with Kirk working in his office. And the same time I was there for about 6 months. And then you cornered me again one evening after I was done coaching. And I just remember watching you in the small room, just kind of like walking around, like, why is he hovering? What is he doing right now? And you were like, would you ever think about making this a full-time gig, like being our first space monkey? And I remember the same idea, being like, well, I love being here. But I had just taken that other job, but I'd only been there for 6 months. So we spent 6 months, you and me and Jen, talking about how we could actually make this happen.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Which is, I remember that was, I mean, it's still kind of a foreign idea to be a full-time fitness coach. And I mean, for the longest time when I was the owner, or I am still the owner, but still, like, I'd be coaching and people would ask me what my real job was. And so for someone to be able to make a full-time living coaching was such a wild idea to the public, and still is. But for you too, like that was really foreign at the time. And so I think that, the thing I've hopefully through my creepiness been able to communicate is how much I appreciated your trust and willingness to just take a go at it and figure out like if this was going to be, the worst idea in the world or awesome. And, so that was just super nerve wracking. Like, is this actually going to be a thing? Like, we're in a town of 10,000 people. Most people are surprised to know we have a gym that works in a small town like that anyway, but not only to do that, but to have a full-time staff member. Like now we have 4, but at the time, man, you were like you said, the space monkey on the experiment. And
well, and I think, I mean, at the same time, as much as all of that was very nerve-wracking for me, there was a part of me that I knew I like trusted you and Jen. Like there was so much we had started to build that relationship, and eventually that's turned into like you guys are like my family at this point. But in the beginning, I say the same thing with now my husband. I knew there was something there that could be great and could be more. And sometimes for me, he's always pushed me as well to say, like, you have to take those risks for it to become something that brings you so much happiness. And if you never take the risk, then you're never really going to know where that's going to go for you. And as much as looking back and like leaving a decent job that was a good job for this town and doing something. I remember my parents, they were like, I don't even understand what you're doing at this place. Like, what do you mean you want to be a full-time employee coaching? And it's so hard to explain, but I always knew you guys had built so much, and I knew there was so much left to build with that facility and the gym that we love so much. And I'm just grateful I got to be along for the ride.
Yeah, well, we couldn't have done anywhere near what we did without you. So same as far as the gratefulness goes. And the pivot, I mean, what we did after that together with you was so much better than I could have ever guessed. And I owe all to you. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
But again, such a wild, it was predicated on building different avenues of our business that we didn't have. Like we had no personal training at that time. We didn't have much nutrition. We weren't doing we were still a pretty rough around the edges thing, especially compared to where we are now. But yeah, again, your trust or I don't know, your blind trust and jumping off the cliff with us was so that's what laid the groundwork for getting to where we are now.
Agreed. I think, there, like with anything, you have to just keep trying different ways of change and evolving. And I think we could go on YouTube and find those original videos that we used to film.
Oh yeah.
When we used to mic myself up with underneath my shirt and like film funny videos and put them on YouTube. I mean, but if you think about where that went and now how big that is and relevant in social media, like we were very much a little bit ahead of it there.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I remember again, all of us kind of just saying, well, I think this is what we're supposed to be doing. So let's just see what happens. And reading off teleprompters and
Yes.
screwing it up 150 times.
Oh, I have so many memories of Jen and I being like, okay, slow the teleprompter down. Okay, it's too slow. Speed it up.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, but such a good lesson for, anybody else. I think there are a lot of people that are unhappy with the path they're on, but unwilling to take the jump to something else it's going to be uncomfortable for a while, and it probably always will be to some degree. But that, like, understanding that that's just how it's going to go. It's never going to be a smooth and easy transition necessarily.
Yeah. And I think, partially that's why I loved CrossFit, or what we, the conditioning part of what we do is it does teach you that you can do hard things.
Yeah.
And it might suck and it might be uncomfortable, but it's worth it if you try to do something hard every once in a while and challenge yourself and take that risk. So
yeah, totally. I think that's a good acknowledgement and understanding too. And then from there, I think we freaking overloaded you with as much as we possibly could at first. Did you ever get burnt out and tired of that in the beginning? Like, how much did you?
Well, I think, in the beginning, it was just getting comfortable with it all. I look back now and at how much I did. I think how many classes I used to coach a week. I coached 18 classes, maybe 20 at some point.
Yep.
I could not do that now. I don't,
yeah, same.
I don't have that in me anymore. But when you're starting, you just and I tell that to other coaches as they're coming in, you just have to be willing to do anything to make it work.
Yeah.
And if you say yes to it all, then eventually you can start to refine that schedule. But, in the beginning, I knew that that's what it was going to take for me to be able to not just survive and have an income, but also to get the reps and experience I needed to grow.
Yep.
And to build the trust with the members, because I definitely was not trusted in the beginning by a lot of people, which is just a part of the process. I can see that now from the outside, but when you're that person and you don't know that that's the normal part of becoming a coach, it's terrifying. And that part was really hard. And I just had to keep saying, well, you just have to keep showing up. And the more you do, the better this is going to get. And the more they're going to hopefully like you if you're just yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really big lesson for me. And I feel like I learned a lot from that trial, that hard period of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure that can be put into words how dramatic that was, for, like you said, it's not that, yeah, you're probably right. As far as not the members not trusting you, it sounds kind of harsh, but the reality of it is that's probably the truth. It had gone from me doing 99% of everything to Neil's doing a bunch.
Yep.
And she moved on to the fire department. And then you came in and you had been coaching the afternoons, but I don't think anybody in the morning really knew who you were.
No. And
so then I was never great at the transition type of a process. I think I was kind of all right, why don't you show up at 6 and start coaching then?
Just show up on the whiteboard. You'll be that person cleaning it down, and they're going to know that you're coaching next.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yep. I think hopefully that's gotten better, mostly through your help with that. But yeah, there was a rough and tumble group at 6 that was probably not the most welcoming or warm.
No.
Probably didn't welcome you with flowers.
And I think, if you work at a gym or you own a gym, that early morning class is usually the hardest one to get to be comfortable with change or with new people. They're great people. I love 6 a.m. so much, and even that crew back then, but you have to earn it. And I think that actually was a really great lesson for me, because I think I could tell myself, if I can get them on my side, then I can do this. And it may take time. And there was always going to be moments where there's people who know more than me or know how to do something better. But if I can earn their trust and they can trust me as a person, then they're going to respect me when I'm in front of the room.
Yeah, totally. You just come, well, hopefully all of our 7 listeners of this are they're probably members, but I do work with so many other gym owners who have such a hard time with my side of it, to understand that it's just going to take time. And that eventually you get this amazing coach that you have become, but it's only going to come through some discomfort on both sides, or on all sides, from the owner side to the member side and the coach's side, is that they're just going to have to get their reps and their experience. And hopefully I can find somebody with a good attitude like you had, and good outlook and good perspective and personable and affable. And now like you're more beloved than I am.
I don't know
In
about
the
that,
but well, I'm the one that makes everybody nervous and freaks everybody out, creeping around in the corner, asking them if they want to work.
You've grown out of that in a lot of ways,
but yeah, I mean, I think again, back to just in a more universal thing, like that's such a good perspective. It's just like, sometimes it's just gonna, like, it's just, you can't avoid the suck, because it's just, sometimes it's just gonna suck before it gets better. Well, it's always gonna suck before it gets better.
I think, I don't know, I look to, and at the end of the day, if the members couldn't have given me the trust eventually, then maybe they're not a good fit anyway, because if someone's trying hard enough and they continue to show up and they're willing to learn and get to know people, then that should be a good sign of someone who like belongs in that facility. And I think that with all of the coaches we've brought on since then, people who have struggled and made it through the other side, if there's someone who is still pushing back against them, I'm like, well, I don't know, if maybe you're not the right fit for this.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, life's going to happen. People are going to move on. And we've had transitions over the last 12 years and stuff that have been harder. But at the end of the day, like, we do tend to get it right. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I don't think we really got into that with Nick or Lisa or even Kirk, where I think that there's that initial trust building for people that like not nobody like Nick. Sorry, Nick. I mean, people had a hard time like gaining the trust, or people had a hard time trusting Nick. They had a hard time trusting Lisa. Like that. It's a pretty intimate relationship when you're with somebody all the time, coaching them, and like they're feeling like they're bearing their weaknesses to you. So I think there is always that period for discomfort as a coach that eventually that becomes established. And again, all the staff that we have now are so beloved. It's hard to imagine not having them, but they all got to, or had to get over a hump.
Yeah. And I think too, having a diverse staff and personality type is super important, because I'm not going to be the right coach for every individual. Hopefully I can get along with everyone, but having that diversity of what your coaching style is like, so that you can reach a different type of person, I think that's huge. And I think you have done a great job, and we have built a great team in that way of having different personalities, and that provides different angles for each member to have that connection that maybe they don't have with me, but they have with Lisa, and vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super fun when I'm in consults, is knowing like this person's going to connect with this person. And I don't always get that right either, but it's neat to have a well-rounded, thank God not everyone's me.
Or me.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's just a good perspective to have, or what good, well-rounded perspective to have. And so you full-time coach for when did you start doing that? Like February or so, I want to say. Remember? Whatever year that was. Who knows?
Probably. Yeah, I think so.
2019 probably. And then you became head coach and a leader, which I think you would kind of, because of the full-time status that you were, and you were the only one there, I think you had that implicitly, but then it was official. And it's been, through COVID. That was right before COVID.
Oh yeah, through COVID. More weird videos being made at home.
How are we going to survive this?
Yes, that was, I mean, a good test of what you had built within our gym, and seeing that we could make it through something like that. I don't want to go backwards, but I'm grateful that we were able to do what we did.
Yep. And I remember where we were when I think I told you I want to test this place. I said something like, we've been on, an upswing of the economy. Everything's been good. Like, I wonder what happens when things go south.
Then.
And not a couple months later, did probably the worst situation for gyms come across the bow. So I got my wish.
You did.
Sorry
to the world.
I won't wish for that. I will not wish for that again.
No.
But we did make it through. And I think a lot of that same thing was like just the trust. I think your leadership replicated some of that. Hey, just trust this process, because it's not going to be elegant or perfect, but we're going to learn how to do this online for as long as we need to do it. And you did that, and you were able to instill that confidence with the team that we had behind us. And we, did a lot of online nonsense and rallying the troops and tried to hold everything together.
I remember I did bring up COVID to one of our newer coaches, and I said, we used to have to film ourselves talking about the workouts and send them to a list of clients. And she looked at me, she said, I would, of quit right there. And I think about that, you know, if you hadn't have gone through it, but in the moment, like it'd be the willingness just like, okay, let's just try it, see what happens here. And it keeps people going. So it did work.
Totally. And I think there is, again, it's like the same, we're going to have through whatever it is that somebody's doing, like they're going to have tough spots. And if you just kind of keep plowing forward, you're going to come out the other side stronger because you will have survived the tough part. But you'll also have more confidence knowing that in the future, when tough things happen, that it's just kind of that same process. It's like, well, this is going to suck for a little bit, but put your head down and go.
Yeah. And I think that too, willingness to just be in an uncomfortable spotlight in some ways. I think that's part of coaching, is putting yourself out there in a way that is uncomfortable, because people can say they don't like who you are, which is the scary part of coaching, I think. And same thing with sending those videos, the willingness to just like get weird and be okay with it. And if someone laughs at it, then that's fine. At least you tried.
Yeah.
And that's a big fear for so many of us, especially myself, when we started doing social media and thinking about putting myself out there again in front of people I don't even know, and how terrifying that is. But once again, if you just, people are people and they're accepting of who you are if you just continue to show up and try, for the most part. And if they're not, then I don't really need them anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think to celebrate you a little bit more too, like you've been on the tougher side of some feedback or whatever, not necessarily directed at you, but like you've stood strong through some of the negatives that we've had to go through. And again, I think that's just really refined your character and personality in a way that, like, I mean, you're still the same to me, like you're still the same amazing person, but I think you've seen you could have, like, I don't know, thrown in the towel or gotten frustrated or just kind of like gotten jaded with, we have a very interpersonal relationship with our people, and that can be tough. But I think you've really gotten a lot of confidence through what you just, like, as an example of what you just said. You know what? Sometimes people are just not a good fit, or they're just like, that's not somebody I need in my life if they're going to have that perspective. And that's cool. That's a attitude I don't think most people, twice your age would have. So
yeah, I mean, you can catch me on any moment where I might not feel that way, but if overall you can have that outlook, I do think it's very helpful. I think I will always, some part of me, have that imposter syndrome, or have moments of thinking like, should I be the one doing this? Like, should I be the one teaching people how to do this? But I do think that the showing up and continuing to try, even when it's uncomfortable, is how I've gotten past a lot of that, and can remind myself, no, you are the right person for this. Or if you're not, you'll continue to learn how to be that person. And that's a huge testament, I think, to the people in my life and the relationships I've had throughout my life, and helping build me up and support me in that way. And it's okay to fall down. And I have, and I will continue to do so, but I'm glad that I continue to try.
Yeah. Where does that come from? Like, you mentioned a couple, people in your past or whatever, but like, have you always had had the resiliency that you have now?
I don't know. I think that a lot of it probably comes from like sports growing up. My dad and my mom both were huge supporters in me, and I was always a good athlete. I'm not a great athlete, but I think having that experience, and my dad never treated me, I always felt like I didn't feel like a girl. Like, a lot of time girls were treated differently in sports in a lot of ways, but my dad didn't treat me that way. And I think he gave me a lot of confidence because of it. Like, my sixth grade dream was to be the first girl in the NBA. You can't see me standing up, but that didn't happen. And I don't know if I would have ever felt that way if my dad hadn't been the one to like show up consistently for me, to be at every game, to build me up and show me that it's okay. Like, if I lost or if I missed a shot or whatever it was, like, to just continue to go back out there and try. And I got to watch him do that with his business as well. Yeah. And then my mom just being my biggest cheerleader, I think that did teach me a lot growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I mean, I don't know if you can replicate that or not, but if you're, you know what I mean? Like, as a parent or somebody who's guiding somebody else, I think just teaching them that failure is okay and to dream big, and that's all right.
Yeah. It's just a part of life.
Yeah, totally. So let's talk about what you're doing now. So you and Jen,
yeah, I'm lucky enough that along that ride of being a part of the gym, I got to do a lot of nutrition coaching as well. Back when we would do group challenges, and you and myself and your wife, Jen, we would all work together. And Jen and I have always just hit it off from the beginning. We're very different, but very alike in a lot of ways. And I think that it just creates a really good working relationship. And I can't remember where we were when she said, "Okay, I'm going to be building something and I'm not ready to tell you yet, but I have this idea." And I've seen that look in your eyes before. I've seen it in hers many times before. And I remember thinking, "Okay, it's going to be something good because I wouldn't be here today if you guys hadn't had crazy good ideas." And she approached me about Flourish, an online nutrition coaching, higher level of accountability, a wider reach because we'd be doing this online. It wouldn't just be within our community or within our gym, even though that is kind of how it started. And I was hooked on this idea. I said, okay, you kick it off, get this thing started. And when you're ready for me, I want nothing more than to work with you. And I'm lucky enough that she trusted me to bring me in on this. And we started coaching together on something that has now grown to be bigger than it was at that point. We have our own app that we're using. I've officially become a business partner with her. And we're building something that is able to help women everywhere. And I think, it's a different approach as well. We're not just giving someone macros or telling, it's not the same type of dieting that you hear out there. We're having a different approach of teaching people how to live their life to the fullest without being stuck in restriction and stuck doing things that continue to fail over again in the past.
Yeah.
So for us, for me, it's been a wonderful journey to kind of having the ability to build the confidence and the knowledge with where we started with doing challenges and one-on-one coaching within the gym and to build my confidence and then eventually feel like I was ready to take that next step and become a business partner with your wife and like make that part official. It's been really exciting for us and for me especially.
Yeah, me too. Like just being on the sidelines and watching you guys because you guys are both just so fired up about it. And like I see the excitement. I love how you guys work together and like you guys are just a great match in that way. You guys complement each other in just a very ideal fashion. So
Thank you.
yeah. And you guys are working with just women. What's the demographics and
So we work with women over the age of 35. You tend to find that, as you're growing up and you're in your 20s, you can cut a couple of things, lose the weight. But once you get over 30 and especially over 35, there's a lot more challenges that are thrown your way from just the natural muscle loss at that age that we start to see decade by decade. Or, as women, we hear them say all the time that they think it's because their metabolism is slowing down, but they're not really understanding they're losing muscle at that time. So we like taking these concepts that women think that they know that society has told them for so long that this is why you're broken and this is why you can't lose weight. And so that demographic of 35 plus is just this revelation for women of like they have control and we're teaching them how to take that control back. And I think it's very powerful to give women that power in a way of we're not telling you what you have to cut out of your life. We're telling you how to make your life bigger and fuller so you can show up for yourself and for your family and you can feel confident and you don't feel like you're constantly floundering on how to figure out what's going on with your body.
yeah, that's awesome. It's probably pretty freeing. Like you said, it sounds like you guys aren't coaching people to be on or off, or, it sounds like it's just a lifestyle, which I think is kind of a cliche to say, but I think it's true. Like it's a lot of education.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a big piece of it is the mindset coaching. And that's where a lot of other diets or programs are lacking in really thinking about the mindsets that we've developed over the years. I mean, I'm a millennial. I grew up in the era of, skinny, a moment on the lips, forever on the hips, all of the different things you can think of that you were told was normal growing up. And it's created these unhealthy mindsets of getting women to feel like they're stuck. And so not only are we teaching women how to feed themselves, fuel themselves, train for strength and longevity, but also how to think in a way that shifts their power and takes that control back. And that is the piece that usually allows women to reach their goals and keep their goals forever. We don't want women to have to do another diet. You should never have to do that again because what we're doing is not dieting. We're teaching you how to fuel your body to feel strong and to have a powerful mindset as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are the biggest differences like from coaching men and women? Like, what are the things you see that you touched on a couple of those, but just to clarify that a little?
I think, like I just from a female perspective, men didn't have the same ideas put on them growing up. Not to say that boys and men do not have different types of challenges, but when it came to their bodies and the way women were taught to think about themselves, I think there's just so much deeper I can really dig in with a woman about that perspective and about that mindset that has just been ingrained in them for so long.
Yeah.
And so starting at that point with women is usually the most powerful point, where men is just a little bit different of approach. A lot of times it's just the lack of understanding of how much protein they need to be eating or the fuel that they need to feel good. Where women, I usually find that like the ability to go deeper and to talk about the struggles that they've had emotionally over the years and how we can make that shift becomes like the launching pad to for their future, which is the most exciting part. Because once that like light bulb goes off, that they know they can take control and they can move past that and they can feel this good forever. That's the biggest like joy that I get to have out of seeing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's not awesome that that's the experience, but it's awesome you guys are making the change.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, because I mean, you said as a male, it's just I don't know, I can't quite comprehend that. So coaching women has always been a little bit of a challenge. Like on the surface level, it's all this. It's not the same, but it's very similar.
The theories,
yeah, but the just being able to look someone in the eyes and say, I know how that feels, or I know what that experience is like I can't do that. And
yeah. And I think too, for a long time, a lot of those emotions women have been forced to push them under the rug and we're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to talk about maybe past experiences of unhealthy habits or disordered eating. And that just isolates you and makes you feel alone in your experience. And now being able to have that conversation and help someone understand that you are not alone. This is something that more women have gone through and I've gone through, and we can really build past that. I think that's really powerful. And I think it's time to start having those tough conversations, just like with anything else. It allows you to, once again, take your power back and have control over your choices and how you feel and moving forward with it.
Yeah. How many how many women, I mean, this is probably hard to put a number on, but I would imagine that like as a spousal relationship, that kind of connection would be hard too. Cause like, if Jen comes to me and tries to talk to me about her past and what she's gone through, like that's a really same thing. Like it's hard for me to coach somebody. It's hard for me to relate to her on those things. So I would imagine that having another female to be able to like have a transparent conversation and again, to relate so strongly, I would just bet that there's probably some negative reinforcement by having a conversation with a male spouse who would not be able to understand that and would assume that it's just, it's whatever. But I would think that that'd be cool, or not cool, but really empowering.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's one of the best parts about our community that we've built through Flourish is they're not just working with Jen or myself. They now are a part of that community. So there's groups within our app where they're talking to each other. They're sharing ideas and recipes and challenges and struggles that they're going through. They're leaning on the other women and building that part of it, bridging women together has just been humongous to watch how powerful it can be when one woman can lean on another woman and help build each other up.
Yeah.
And I think, as much as it is hard, like in a relationship with myself and my husband, even he can't understand those struggles that I've had, but being able to have an outlet for it is really healthy. And so that's what the gym originally was for myself. And then now having that relationship with Jen and other women in my life and this community within Flourish, it helps me feel I'm not alone in this, which is awesome. And I think everyone deserves that no matter what you're going through. Like a lot of times it's easy to feel isolated, but having an outlet and people who can relate with you is huge.
Yeah, that's so true. As much as like it's easy to talk negatively about the internet and the community, I think that's kind of cliched about social media or this or that. The other, there is a lot of power to that too, where there's a connection that's made that, like you said, the feeling of isolation is a little bit less strong when you can find somebody else through an online community. It's probably more comfortable to do that rather than initiating that conversation with a friend or I don't know, straight, whatever it is. Like I think that the online avenue that you guys are on does allow for that to be more of a comfortable thing to say, hey, yeah, I'm not alone. And that's probably, like you said, half the struggle is just feeling like, oh, cool, I'm not weird or totally disordered. So
yeah, and it allows to, I mean, we all want a quick fix. Who doesn't want to solve their body issues in 30 days? But as great as that sounds, that's usually not their approach that's going to work. And so when you can see that someone else's journey isn't actually taking 30 days, because when we see all the marketing and advertising of like, oh, look at what she did in 30 days. Well, what happened in the next 365 days, And so having the ability and the transparency of seeing other women on the same or similar timeline as you, I think that's also very powerful. And I think that can also go back to the gym. a lot of times when I start coaching a new client or a new member and they come in, they're like, well, you can do all the things. You're doing the pull-ups, you're squatting this much weight. I'm like, well, it took me 2 years to get here. And you can't see that timeline. But when they can go into a class and they can see another new member who's having those same struggles, and it's really helpful to have that transparency as well, from whether it's fat loss or strength building or whatever you're working on.
When somebody does have a lot of success in like a 30-day type of a context or a 6-week or whatever it is, like a short-term type of a setup, do you feel like that contributes to some of the, I don't know, disordered identity or relation? Can it?
I think it can. I think it depends on whatever the approach was to get those results. I think, we do see women who make a lot of progress in 30 days within our program, but it's just a jump start to the rest of their journey. I think that a lot of the other tactics of high restriction or cutting a lot of things out, if we're talking about fat loss or trying to lose weight, that you're going to see a lot of progress in 30 days if you slash your calories to that of a toddler's, but that's also going to lead to unhealthy thinking afterwards because you can't sustain that forever. And so once you then gain that weight back, all of a sudden you do have a new complex that you maybe didn't have beforehand.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, well, I did it, but I'm broken. I can't keep it off. Or I must be a failure because all of a sudden I gained all the weight back plus some. And so you're adding another layer to that already challenging piece that you were looking for. And now you have another problem to work with, is this new mindset.
Yeah.
And so I think that can be a big struggle when I see women who've gone through, myself included. I mean, I did the cabbage diet back in the early 2000s. I know what that feels like. And it did not lead to positive outcomes for myself either, to lose weight, to gain it back, to lose it again, and just not understand why I kept failing. Whereas having I think the community aspect of it, having the mindset shift and having the ability to accept the timeline that's going to be more appropriate to forever results.
Yeah.
Like when I can get someone to buy into being patient, that's when I know we can be successful together. When someone looks at me and says, I don't know, I haven't lost weight in the first 3 days, it's time for another hard conversation, because that's the biggest piece we really have to shift, because that's what society's been telling us for years, is you should be able to lose the weight you want to in 30 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like it might just reinforce like you said, all the negative thoughts and process around that. If that's the outcome, or if that's the definition of success, it's just the number on the scale, and that you can achieve that in a short period of time because through disordered eating, like that seems like it's just, reinforcing the negative.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think, one thing I'm grateful for with social media and how things are changing in this world is we are starting to have more context around, the scale is just one tool in our toolbox. It's not the end all be all. Just because that scale number changes doesn't mean that other factors are changing in your health. And I think I've seen that a lot more on social media, talking about, okay, well, maybe your muscle went up and that's why this is changing. So the information is getting out there. But I think that's the conversation we continue to have with our members, because even though we may know that the scale isn't everything, we still have that moment. You stand on the scale, the negative thoughts want to win in that moment, but having the context and having those conversations and having the other women and other people going through it is really helpful to remember, okay, it's bigger than this.
Yeah.
And there is more to the story.
Yeah. I think the functionality part of it too is such an important metric of what your body can do, and not trying to make it conform to a certain set of standards.
Yep, definitely. And I think learning over time, like learning that just because someone else is able to maintain a smaller body fat percentage, and maybe that's like a good fit for them and their body is made to do so, doesn't mean it's correct for everyone. Like the best example I ever heard was like your natural shoe size. Just because I want to be a size 3 doesn't mean that shoving my foot in a size 3 is going to be comfortable. I may be able to hold on to that for an hour, maybe a week, but I'm not going to be able to do that on the long run because I'm not a size 3. And it's the same thing with a body type. I could force my body to get to a really lean body fat percentage, but maintaining it is going to be a lot harder. And is it going to be healthy for me emotionally? What am I going to have to give up to maintain those results? Am I going to be able to go out with my friends? Am I going to have energy to do my workouts, to lift heavy? Am I going to feel good when I go to sleep at night? Probably not. So it's having that conversation of, is that the right fit for you? And what is a healthier fit? And it's not just the number on the scale or what your body fat percentage is, but it's all the other pieces that build a big life.
Yeah.
Your relationships, your energy, your fuel, all of it.
Yeah. That's awesome. The shoe size one, I've never heard that. And I'm definitely stealing that. So thank you for that.
I think that's a Jennifer Brockstrom
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, but that's great. I mean, that's a perfect, like you said, I mean, you could bind your feet.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be good for you long term.
Nope. Didn't go well for those women.
Nope.
No.
Nope. Not a good plan.
hmm
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, yeah, the other stuff too, like you're talking about, that's the normalized, just making it normal. It's just life. And I talk about that all with fitness. Like that's just a part of the journey. I'm going to be super fit at some points and I'm going to be way
Yeah.
less fit at other points, but
Yep.
it doesn't mean that I'm not in some form of fit or that there's no judgments around it for me.
hmm
I've been on the journey for whatever, 30 years, but there's going to be ups and downs and whatever, but there's no definitions or identification changes based on my moment in time
Yeah.
that I happen to measure it.
Your value doesn't change. And like at those times too, maybe the times you were less fit, you might have been happier. Maybe you were on vacation. And I think about that for women with
Yeah.
where they were in their journey or where they are for myself with my weight. Okay, maybe I'm a little heavier right now, but am I having a good time with my friends? Am I doing more social stuff? Is that making me feel happy? So is it okay that right now I'm a little bit heavier? It probably is. As long as I'm still, fueling my body and getting my vegetables and working out, then that's okay.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, we tie our value to our weight, and it's time to separate the two.
Yeah. This is a big question, but like as a society, like what would you see as improvements? Like there is so much celebrity, there's so much Instagram, there's so many like of those snapshots of idyllic physiques or what is expected to be the norm or the ideals of perfection. Like do you have like what can we do, like you know what I mean, like, and that's a
Yeah.
big ass question, but what does it look like in an ideal society?
I think that's hard. I think, there's been these bright moments of now we're talking about body positivity or we're talking about the change in the perspective of that, but it doesn't last very long. I think, especially when it comes to Hollywood and what we're looking at on social media, as a person who's putting myself out there in the fitness world, if you compare my videos and what I'm showing and looking like versus what's going viral right now,
Yeah.
it does show what is still winning. I do think that it gives us an opportunity to continue just the conversation and teaching not just women, but all people what a healthy lifestyle looks like. And it's not just tied to your physique. And it's so much more than that. And I think if the people who are, being shown the most in Hollywood and they could maybe have more of a well-rounded perspective and put that out there rather than just what they look like, it could be helpful. I don't know. That didn't answer the question at all, but I think that's a really tricky one.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's necessarily an answer to it, but that is like, I agree. And that's a good perspective. Another big, somewhat controversial thing, but like, with the body positivity thing, I think there was a lot of, there was like kind of a two counterpoints on that, like two major parties where it was like, well, one, this is unhealthy. Like, are we celebrating this? I don't know. Are we celebrating unhealthiness, or is this real life? Like, where does that line go?
I don't know. For me, when I think, yes, I think when we went big on the body positivity movement, there was that strong aspect of like, well, are we really supporting something that is super unhealthy? When I think of body positivity, I think it's more accurate in my mind of someone saying, okay, this is my healthy body and my body fat is at 25%. And I get to be positive about it, even though this person's healthy body fat is at 19%. Like that's more of like that we have different physiques. We're going to look very different in a swimsuit, but I also do all the other pieces in my life to make me feel happy and healthy as well.
Yeah.
And so I think it comes down to like we tie the body positivity once again just to physique.
Yeah.
And it should be more than that. And I think an interesting idea that I just saw out there was we need to stop with body positivity or negativity. Like, what about neutrality?
Yeah.
Like, that's a new idea out there. Like, why do we have to tie these such strong emotions to our physique when it should just be a neutral part of the bigger picture of what it's able to do?
Yeah. I think happiness gets left out of this picture a lot. Yeah. And there's not a good way to measure that so much as, I mean, you probably could, but it does, like, there's a certain level of contentment and happiness that comes at a varying degree based on a lot of different things.
Yeah.
But somebody's happiness may be highest if they're not necessarily as healthy as they could. Like they may not eat as healthy as they could. They may not work out as much as they could. But at the same time, like so many people are unhappy. So, and so many fit people are really unhappy. So where's the balance? And I'm not sure that those are like interrelated so much to say that, some people just, they love certain foods and they love certain activities or lack of, and that's like, I think that the lack of judgment or the less judgment there and putting more emphasis on happiness is probably a good way to go. I don't know.
I agree. I think, people ask me all the time, or when I get caught at the grocery store with tortilla chips in my carton, a member wants to ask me about it. But at the end of the day, for me, like that 80-20 is a happy place for me to be. 80% of the time, I'm trying to do all the things that I know will make me feel good and healthy. And then 20% of the time, I'm eating a taco. I'm going on vacation and I travel to eat. Your wife is the same way. And those things are important to me. Those things bring me joy. And no 13% body fat is ever going to be worth it if I have to sacrifice all these other pieces. And I think, it's such a good point, because happiness should be a part of the equation.
Yeah. I think the other, like the time horizon part of all of it too, like is on both perspectives. One, you could be 3% body fat and shredded, miserable because you haven't eaten in 2 weeks and whatever. The other side though too is like if through the immediate gratification of eating poorly or not working out or just kind of not making the best choice, like the long-term happiness may be diminished because you just don't have that quality of life down the line. So, I don't know that there's an answer to this, but these are all like complicated questions.
For sure. And I think that's where something that we've tend to forgotten about in our country is a little bit of moderation. Like what happened to the middle ground, and it doesn't have to, you don't have to live on either end of that spectrum of like restricting absolutely everything. So you can look super shredded, but not have any healthy friendships because you can't go out with anyone, or vice versa. You feel like crap as you're aging because you're putting tons of highly processed foods in your body at all time. Like there is a middle ground of a little bit of both.
Yeah.
And a lot of bit of like self-care and taking care of yourself. I do think that part is really important, but my life would be a lot sadder without tacos.
Same.
So
every day.
Yep.
Tacos. That's my book, the taco cleanse. But yeah, I think that, I don't know. I think as coaches, I think one of the more challenging things that we have to overcome is that a lot of the things that we've just talked about aren't super sexy. Like, and they don't, like you said, the algorithms and the viewers and this talking about 80-20 doesn't get a lot of attention, or it just doesn't, it's not that abnormal. Everybody wants the new thing or the, the headline grabbing, whatever new approach or it's this, that, and the other. But the 80-20 and being consistent most of the days of the week is still the answer.
That's the same thing when people talk about, like, especially when you start your strength journey, it is not sexy to try and tell someone that it's going to take you a couple of years to get to where your idea of where you want to be is. And if you would have told me that on my first day when I was doing somersaults, that I wasn't going to do a pull up for 2 years, I would have been frustrated as well, because it is not sexy, but consistently showing up for yourself, doing the hard things and creating that balance over time, you'll get there. And that part, it's worth it. And I think like developing, once again, the patience is a big piece of it.
Yeah. How much do you guys work around goals, like with your clients at Flourish?
We do work with goals. I think, the big goals are usually the weight loss goals as someone walks in. I really like the idea of standards and not goals. Like, what is the standard for yourself? My standard is that I drink a glass of water when I first get out of bed. Like, one of my standards is that I work out 4 to 5 times a week. It's not a goal for me to work out 4 times a week. That is a standard in my life. And I think that's a big piece of what I try and teach these women, because goals become this like, oh, well, it was just a goal. I didn't meet it. But if we can set some standards around our health and how we treat our bodies, I think that's great. And then having like a loftier goal of like, what is that long-term goal for yourself is a great way to work towards something.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as we were talking about that, I was really thinking about how I do tend to work a lot around goals, and it's that time of year it's goal setting season. And I'm sure I'll still talk about it, but it does, a lot of things that you were saying made me really kind of reconsider that, because hitting a goal is like a fraction of a moment in time. And the process to get there is really, I think, the thing that should be focused on. And like, then
low battery.
Okay. I think if you close your thing. Yeah.
It just died in the middle.
Then I think you will, like, that will get you to where you want to go and well beyond if you can just focus on the goals for tomorrow or the standard. Like you said, I think standards is probably a better better way to put that. But if you just continue to do those things and make those a realistic part of your life,
Yeah.
like the goals will probably come. But if you just fixate on that point way out in the future, it's either going to be really frustrating until you get there, or you're going to get it and then just be so enamored with the next goal that you're not going to celebrate it long enough.
And I think a lot of people, and myself included, when we set these huge lofty goals, we have this we imagine what it's going to feel like on that day when we finally reach it. And then a lot of times that moment just doesn't live up to it. And never. So like I try and really get my clients to celebrate the milestones along the way, like every little piece that is working you closer to that bigger goal and helping you creating the consistency and the standards you have in your life. Because if you don't celebrate those small things, those habits that you are building on top of, I promise you that day is not going to be the day that you imagined. No. And that letdown can be really hard. And then once again, like you said, now you're just ready to set that next big goal because you want to try and create the feeling that you just didn't get.
Yeah. That's awesome. Wow. I feel like we could do this forever, but I promise you 45 minutes and we've surpassed that. So that was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm just glad I had something to talk about.
Oh man, you have so much to talk about. And from coming from somersaults and
oh my God.
I'm not sure if it was a misplaced trust or what, but trusting us along the way and
not misplaced.
Have you the amount of lives that you've changed, and hopefully your own has changed, it sounds like, but man, you've impacted thousands and thousands of people at this point, and we're all just so lucky to have you in our lives. So
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me and trusting me as well, bringing me along this ride, because I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't right here right now.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
We'll do this again soon. Don't worry.
Oh, yay.